One. Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parasha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple, Congregation Anshe Emet. And joining me are my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky, Anshe Chesed of New York City. No, whenever I say New York City, I want to say New York City. It's so
Live from New
exciting.
York
New York
with
City.
Parsha Talk.
We are so excited to be with you, and thank you to our many, many viewers and listeners, especially the viewers and listeners at Camp Ramah in the Berkshires, Dutchess County, New York, where we are for 12 years running. I'm just inventing that number. The best Parsha talk ever. People look forward to this at camp every week. They still do. I get emails,
The entire
letters.
camp, the entire camp falls silent when
When
Parsha
we
Talk
play Parsha
comes on
Talk on the
Kol
radio, Kol Rama
The best thing is I
102.3,
heard that even the rain stops when it goes on.
100%.
The
We are
brain stops when it comes on.
we're delighted. And you know what they say to me? They say, you have so much fun. And that's
We
true.
do.
And if there's one thing that we want to convey to our listeners is that Torah is fun. And Torah gives us joy and Torah gives us life. And
Torah
with
is matok midvash. It's sweeter than honey,
it,
and it is fun because I mean, first of all, we're like Judaism runs to people who like talking about books, and that's us. And so if fun for you is just like racquetball, then it's not fun. But if ideas and stories and history and spirituality and things that matter, like religion, I had somebody come into my office. She uh, very interesting person. She's a patrilineal Jew. She's married to a non-Jew, uh, married to somebody from India. She lived in India a bunch of years, and she didn't really grow up with this, but she just wants it so much. And she said, I just feel that I really have an empty spot in my life for the way religions talk about meaning and responsibility and spirituality and ethics. And so, we're integrating her family. I felt like really super happy that she wants to do that through Anshe Chesed. And yeah, this is if you find talking about ethical and spiritual and social and meaningful stuff, if you find that that's fun, then this is a good
it's fun,
religion.
and just apropos of someone who I've also had in the last like couple of months, I've had a surge of people calling and reaching out to because they're interested in becoming Jewish or because of the complexion of their relationships, their families, or whatever. Patrilineal Jews married to non-Jews who want to become Jewish, and that's awesome. It's an awesome experience, and it's validating to us. And I think I don't want to make too much of an illusory correlation between your conversion candidates and mine, but maybe there's something in the air. Maybe we're in a moment. Maybe the moment is that people are beginning to ask questions of meaning and finding a pathway through Judaism, which takes them all the way back. Look, becoming a Jew means that you are joining a people. You're joining a
So
people with a shared, story. Go ahead.
the counterpoint to that in some parts of the Jewish community is a renewed messianic fervor. So in our community, perhaps people are becoming more identified with the Jewish community. In other parts of the Jewish community, people are seeing Chavlei HaMashiach, the messianic churnings and strivings,
Right, which always
which gives, I think, makes your point that it's in the air and different communities respond to it differently.
well, just let's pursue this, for 1 second because we are in a kind of cultural moment, a cultural transition moment. I think we're in a economic moment and even in a human moment. I'm thinking about AI, and we've talked about a little bit here, just how these things are transforming the way that we are all going to live, and there's a lot of apprehension about this, and I think people are going to want to connect to live, analog, trusted, curated and human things. That's LATCH, latch, live, analog, trusted, curated, and human. So we're recording this. We're live
Wait,
recording this.
did you come up with
I
that?
I got it. I didn't come up with this. This is I read.
The,
This is
the
my
one I
one of my
want to change
favorite.
is, yeah, go ahead.
My favorite, one of my favorite writers, Ted Gioia, Gioia. He has a
Yeah.
Substack, and he's quoting someone else who coined this acronym of live, analog, trusted, curated, and human, and the idea that the rebellion against artificial intelligence is to seek out art forms that are live. And here, Jeremy, I'll turn to you because you love live music. We all love live music. There is nothing that compares to being in a live concert. You know, you could put up all the Spotify you want, but the electricity and the experience of being together with thousands of other people is unmatchable.
You don't
Live.
think it's lost something with all the non-live stuff that's out there?
I think the non-live stuff adds and enhances us, okay? I love recorded music. I love to listen to music, but the experience of being together in an audience versus the experience of listening to something on your earbuds, it's orders of magnitude different.
Oh,
You know,
so
what's interesting to me is that with recorded music, every recording is the same,
Right?
right? You listen to a record and the record plays the exact same thing.
I was at a
Live
jazz
music,
evening a couple of weeks ago with one of our listeners, Phil Susswine, and I mean it's just an extraordinary experience to
so
listen to the way music is produced live because people are just you can see they're in a conversation with each other.
so one of the points that was made recently is that Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
still on tour in his mid 80s, doesn't play any song the same way twice.
Yeah, so that's the
And he's
perfect.
been playing for over,
So
75 years now.
he's the antidote to artificial. You won't get a slop with Bob Dylan, but you will get if you turn on Spotify. You don't know sometimes if the music that you're getting is created by a real musician or by a computer, and that's why we are going to seek out live experiences, analog. I mean, this is not we're on Parsha Talk here. We're on screens. This is not an analog experience where we're live, although we've done, this in front of an audience too, but this is the closest thing that we can get. Trusted means that people will, because they have a relationship with us, will trust what we say, and they trust that we know something or we have experience in grappling with some of the ideas. And I think they will experience a degree of empathy with us because I think for many of them they share these questions with us. Curated means that a live person is collecting all these things, and human means you're not interacting with the machine. I
so
use AI.
I-
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I use AI to help, research things. And, AI is like, wow, that's such a great question you asked. You said, like, and I'm going like, oh, gee, thank you very much. But it's not a human being. I get so frustrated
Yeah.
with it.
So curated is the one I want to change here um, because the machine can curate also. I mean, I never heard this before, so I'm
Yeah,
making, this is my just an initial reaction. I think of curated means that the machine has decided what to present you or to what to exclude.
correct. An algorithm
Yeah.
has created a string of songs for you based
So,
on
so yeah.
similarities,
So
right?
so I would like either curious or connective or something like that
Interesting.
if I'm going to latch it on. And of course, it is true that there's no comparison. Simply, I obviously, as is some people may have heard this, that I'm a big Springsteen fan, and Springsteen, I love his records, but and this is a nice thing about Spotify is the sheer quantity of live. There's not a single thing that he has ever done that is better in the studio than it is live.
Right, but there are bands like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young where you could say the opposite.
Maybe that's true, and I'm unfamiliar with that, but I do fundamentally feel that there is something in human beings that will resist the computerization I don't want to be a computerized person. I want to be a person who maybe knows how to use the computer as a tool. Anyway, let's talk about
No,
Devarim.
but just one last thing, which is if I were
Just
to
words.
ask you to give me a list of songs, you are the curator of them, and it is I'm connecting to your choices as another human being who has seen some powerful insights into that music that you want to share, and that's what it means. In other words, I want a human being to be my DJ, not Spotify's algorithm. But let's talk about the Torah portion because the Torah. Look, Dvarim. We're starting a new book, and that's wonderful. It's a milestone in the year and all of that. It also takes us closer to the holidays, which is something that puts us into a different frame of mind. I want to talk about the opening to Parshat Dvarim, where we get an introduction in about 5 verses of where everything is, when everything is, and then already in verse 6, chapter 1, verse 6, Moses starts his speech, and it occurs to me as someone who gives a speech now and then, okay, I'm called upon at least once a week to give a speech, sometimes more. I sit down and I don't want to use the highfalutin term of craft. Okay, it's a little ostentatious, presumptuous to say we are the craft of speaking and speech writing.
Not if you're good.
You know what? I write a speech. I work very hard at it. I try very hard to come up with a good way to open a speech when it's a special sermon or a eulogy. I want people to know what I'm talking about, and I want people to kind of connect to it. And I feel a certain responsibility as a speaker that my job in the opening of a speech is to honor those people who are there and to kind of condense in the opening sentence or two what is it that we're here to do. And I come with that mindset to Moses' beginning here, where he says, Adonai Eloheinu diber elenu b'chorev lemor, rav lechem shevet b'har hazeh. So this is how Moses starts his speech. God, our God, spoke to us at Horev saying, it's enough that you stand in this mountain. And I'm laughing only because, like, what? That's how you start a speech? You don't want to say friends, Romans, countrymen? I mean, the great canon of American speech includes for me two speeches: Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and Martin Luther King at Washington in the March on Washington. So I'm going to turn to Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. How does Lincoln start the Gettysburg Address? Four score.
Nearly 100 years ago,
He doesn't
some
say
of our
that. What
ancestors
did he
did
say? Jeremy,
something.
please read it for me, please, because it's like I want to daven it. I want to daven the text.
Oh, I closed it here. Wait a second.
Get it
Uh,
back.
get it back.
Four
Okay.
score. You're gonna sing it like a haftorah. Four score.
Well, the by the way, um, there's a very funny uh I used it on July 4th. I used this in my speech on July 4th, on Shabbos July 4th. I closed it off with a Hebrew version that I pulled off the web. You know, the mimshal shel ha'am be'ad ha'am bidei ha'am lo yikale min haaretz. It had a leida chadasha shel cherut. Uh, but there's also a very funny Yiddish one. Like not Yiddish,
You're
but yeshiva.
translating the end of the Gettysburg Address, Leida, new
Government
birth
for
of
the
freedom.
people, by the people, shall have a new birth of freedom, and shall not perish from the earth. But there's a very funny one in sort of yeshivish English. Be'erech a yovel and a half. The miyasdim, the miyasdim of this Medina had a what
All right,
I'll
please,
call
in
it
your
a
best
four score
Victorian
and 7 years
English.
ago. Our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Okay, so I don't care how good a speaker you are or how good you are in just reading that sentence is magic, okay? Because the word, he doesn't say 87 years ago. He puts it in a cadence that is, you are hearing something biblical. You are hearing something poetic. You have to make a computation in the middle in a split second. And then he's taking you all the way back to the Declaration of Independence, which we just experienced. And I reread it in my show. It was a beautiful experience last week. It was really, really very moving to read the whole declaration with 20 people on the bima. And that moment, so Lincoln is artfully taking.
But you got to give him one more piece of one more. It's brilliant. The cadence of it, the rhythmic quality. But there's one more thing that we have to just, praise even high. Four score. It sounds strange. Four score. Well, hachayim bahem shiv'im shana, be'im
Yes,
bi'rot shmonim shana. I will now give this to you in the King James.
right,
The days of our year are 60 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 60 years,
right,
yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for soon it is cut off and we fly away. To an audience that would have been familiar with Psalm 90 in the King James, he essentially said, this is human life. 60 and 10 or
right,
60 years. It rings, I would imagine that it rings in the ears of a biblically literate
right.
recipient
And
that this
that's
is
genius. That's oratorical
Well, what is
genius.
the genius? What is his
The
point?
genius is that he is taking his listeners into a mental voyage back to somewhere, and that somewhere is the birth of the nation.
Right.
Okay,
I think
and,
he's doing something else, though. I
and
think what he's saying is that whatever you may have thought yesterday, now you must surely know this war is about slavery and the need to end it.
100%. He,
And he's
yeah,
saying that we know that from the Declaration. And we were talking before about the Declaration and the Constitution. The Constitution permitted slavery, but the Declaration of Independence did not.
so the
so
declaration
this
is
is what I spoke about on this is what I spoke about on
on July
July 4th
4th.
with Frederick Douglass, who of course knows that the Constitution has a provision in which it tolerates slavery, but he said, and I think this relates, I think this resonates to me as a heterodox Jew. Uh, Douglass said, properly interpreted, the Constitution does not endorse slavery. Properly interpreted, not just the superficial pshat, but the pashat pshat, the deep pshat, the pshat, the with the parshanut amuka, with a deep interpretation. The Constitution is ultimately an anti-slavery document, and that's the greatness, perhaps, of Frederick Douglass. Like in this respect, like King, an African American sees in America the possibilities that are often, hidden, and that's just like astonishing. None of which relates to
All
Deuteronomy.
right, so I want to go back to the question of rhetoric and oratory, which is Lincoln is making a choice when he starts the Gettysburg Address. Moses is making a choice when he starts this speech. Lincoln chooses to take his listeners back through art, fully, expressing the length of time that has gone by. And Moses is taking the people back also. Lincoln takes you back to the Declaration of Independence, and Moses takes you back to Horev. And I'm asking, why does he choose that? And why does he go there? Why doesn't he go to Yitziat Mitzrayim? Why doesn't he go to Avraham? Why does he go to Horev? And is it a good thing? Is it a good choice? Or would you have chosen differently? I mean, the chutzpah of saying, but Jews have this chutzpah of saying, look, if I was writing Moses' speech, maybe it made a difference. It's like one time I was teaching someone, and he says, I have a problem with God. If I was designing the human knee, I would design it a little differently. It's like the chutzpah of saying, maybe I should
Okay,
design a knee differently.
so I'm gonna be. I feel uncomfortable about this. I'm going to be comparatively impious here, and say I want to worsen the problem a little bit. Starting at Horev is I think the only possible answer, because it is covenantal, it is normative, it is mitzvot, it is revelation, but that's not entirely what this parsha is focused on. Parsha is focused on, and maybe there's something that is necessary about this because the immediate audience is about to cross into the land without Moses' own personal leadership. It's going to be turning it over to Joshua, of course. But this is all about I'm bringing you to the land. And you traveled here and you traveled there and you fought Sichon Melech HaAmori and you passed through the land of the Moabites and you know, I I love Eretz Israel. I think it's really important. I think that our connection to the Promised Land is profound. But if I was if I was doing it, you know, Moses's honor is all enduring here. And
Well, you
if
know
I was
what?
doing it, I wouldn't talk so much about the various spots in the journey and how the Chorim lived in Seir before Esav and the Avim lived in the so and so and the Kaftor Mikrit. The Kaftor Mik. I think that the location of the people in the journey and the land, while important, is not what I would have done.
Okay, so that's all very nice and well argued. But I think part of the question for me is what meaning do we assign to that phrase, Rav Lochem Shevet Bahar Hazeh? So it's easy to think 40 years later that we know how we got to where we are today. But we did not always know how we got to where we are today. And I think the statement imagines that people might have thought that Horev was the end of the journey, that this grand revelation with the commitments, the mitzvot, that was what we needed as a people. And the people perhaps became complacent because they did not get the message that the journey had to continue. And God had to make them continue because they did not want to continue themselves. And he's the one who says, you've been here too long. And I think he has to remind the people that their judgment is often wanting and it's going to continue to be wanting. And we need another standard to judge our behavior,
All right.
which is the Brit.
I want to pick up on something both of you said, which is so I think the choice of Horev and what he's saying, Rav Lachem, and you ask, how would how you understand that? I want to put it in the most caustic way possible, which is enough of sitting here. Let's get off our duffs
Differences.
and move on. Okay, we got to move on, and I think that is an accessible image for people at the Jordan River who have reached the end of the journey and they're not going to be complacent in staying at the Jordan River, but they need to be told it's time for us to get off our behinds and cross over the Jordan. And here's the problem that Moses has. Moses is not going with them, and I have to find a way to motivate you. You're already motivated. You don't want to stay here, but I want to motivate you even more to go into the land and take with you these words into the land because I'm not going to go with you. I can't
So,
help but hear, Martin Luther King Jr. saying, I may not get there with you. And Moses is saying, I know I'm not going to go with you. So you're not gonna have me, you'll have my book of speech, my 30 chapters of words. They're going to go in with you. And I'm going to be buried on a mountain here. You're going to go in.
so a question, do the people know that Moses is going to die?
So
When God says to Moses and Aaron that you are not going to go into the promised land, are the people
is
aware
that
of that?
public?
It's a
How
good
could it
question.
not be public?
Well, it could
No,
not be
it is.
because God is talking to them privately. That's how it
Okay,
could be.
no, but this is the first line in the next parsha, right? In what is still a single contiguous speech, the next
Vayetchan
parsha,
online?
but Etchanan says, um, he's still reporting to the people stuff. Presumably they would know because they knew all of those journey spots that he told them about. They knew that they had encountered Sichon and Og and Moab and Balak. But that was the substance of the speech in Devarim. And Vet Hanan begins, and he's still talking. He's still telling them stuff that they seem to know. Vet Hanan more and pleaded with God. Please, hachilota leharot et avdecha et godlecha ve'et yadcha chazaka. You who have shown us all your might. Ebrana ve'eret haaretz hatova. let me go see the good land. Vayitaber Adonai bi lemanchem. But God was too mad at me because of you rotten people. Moses is deflecting blame in a little bit, perhaps unseemly way.
Right, but he doesn't say you remember when God told me.
But it is true, but it's true about the whole speech is that he's conveying information that is not new information.
No, and I mean, again, back to what his agenda is. His agenda is: I got to get you moving. I got to get you to understand that I'm not going with you. I got to get you to understand that there's something of me that's going to go in with you, and that's the words here. And it's going to be a long set of speeches, a long set of teachings, which are going to include things that are going to just make your eyes glaze over, like the things that you mentioned, Jeremy, and then the things that are going to become the things that Jews will say to their very last breath. And that's how important this book is. This book is a book that contains everything in it, including the words that become engraved on our doorposts and in our hearts, and the words that we will, if we are so inclined and live with this kind of, great bracha that we will recite on our deathbed as the last words we ever recite, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Echad, which occurs in next week's Parsha. And so, Moses has to set all this up. I'm not sure he does it as well as he could. Okay, I don't want to be too precocious and say, although it's our chutzpah to say, Moses, you should have had a better editor, or Devarim should have been edited better, right? That's too that's very chutzpah.
That was overly impious, but I just have some suggestions.
Maybe you could have cut out the og part,
Oh, that's fine. This
maybe.
this is this is Judaism. You
Or at
can
least
ask your
vocalize
question.
it up.
Well, yeah, it's like I keep saying,
Do
it's
it
like
quick
the
fashion.
congregants are waiting for you. This is like the speech is just going on too long, and just come on, No, but it comports to a certain form, obviously. So he's saying, I'm, starting Horev, and I want to say, let's go. But in order to go, you have to know things. And this might be Dvarim's greatest gift to us, which is, not to be a cliche or a Hallmark card here. To know where you're going, you have to know where you came from.
Another way to reflect on this a teeny bit with a little bit. I certainly didn't make this up. We first meet Moses. He says, "Lo ish devarim anochi."
Nice,
I'm
yes.
not a man of words, but he too has become a man of words. Uh, we've talked about everybody knows that the scene at the rock is very, very mysterious. Is it, as Rashi said, you were supposed to speak to the rock, not hit the rock? It's a bad answer, because God says, take your staff. Well, what am I supposed to do with the staff if not smack the rock? We did that in Exodus. And in Maimonides says, he's yelling at the people, and that's the problem, and calling them rebels, or he's arrogating to himself the miracle. We bring forth. None of those seems very good. Moses himself, later on in Bamidbar, will say, I'm just too old. Lo chalatzet v'lavo. I can no longer do it, even though at the very end of Devarim, they'll say he was as strong as he ever was. But Moses says about himself, you need a new generation of leadership. And I think that part is true. So when he gives this speech, perhaps what we're seeing is somebody whose time is up. And he's a little mad about it. He's resentful that he's not going to cross the land. He's still a little mad at the people. He's getting cranky in his old age, and all the faults are theirs. He's had the most illustrious career, and as you said, we'll get to the Ten Commandments again. We'll get to Shema Yisrael again. We'll get to profound, profound stuff that is the core of Judaism as it's inherited. Uh, Maybe the speech doesn't start off with the grandeur of fourscore and 7 years ago, or maybe the speech doesn't quite, King, we talked about the fact that when King begins the speech
Martin
in
Luther King.
Washington in August of 63, he says, what is it, eight score years ago, and here we are standing in Abraham Lincoln's shadow at the Lincoln Memorial, eight score years ago,
Five
and
square. It's 100 years.
uh, five score. Is that what he says? Like
Yeah,
five score
it's
years
100
ago.
years.
Right. So
The
so because the Civil War was 1863.
Right, exactly,
So
exactly,
so
exactly.
so so here's what I look at the clock and we're coming to an end, and I want to say maybe this is the point. Moses, he's our greatest prophet, okay? And there's a reason why he's the greatest prophet is because he's not like you or me or anybody. Or he's not like Isaiah, and he's not like Jeremiah, and he's not like Micha, and he's not like any of the most. I mean, Ezekiel. These are prophets that you can sit and read them, and we're going to get into the Haftarah of Isaiah, and these are words that change our lives. I've said before in this podcast, without Isaiah, there'd be no Judaism. And I stand by that.
No, absolutely.
Moses is not an Isaiah, okay? But Moses is Moses. There's something so unique and different about him, and it's the tension that we have, that all three of us have with him, that gives rise to the story, which is he's not nice to the people. He completely says, "I'm Horev all the time. You're a stiff necked people. You messed it up. You broke the covenant. You worshipped the calf. You did this and did this, and you succumb to all these kinds of idolatrous things. You're but we love him anyway, and he loves us anyway. He's not the most eloquent of all of the biblical figures, but he's the most important. And that
There'll be no Judaism without Isaiah. There's probably a small number of people we could do this to. No Judaism without Isaiah. Certainly no Judaism without Moshe. There's no Judaism
100%.
without
It's
Moshe
it's like even
Rabbeinu.
it's like non sequitur. It's self evident. You don't have a Judaism without Moses. So it's almost like saying, what's the point? So what? It's like so what? You don't like the way he starts a speech. Who are you? And it's like, okay, and that's the point. The point is that there's distance between him and the people. Moses was not elected to be our best friend and have a beer with. He was not Hillel Hazaken. He's not a chum. He's Moses. And
well, in that way, he's like God, right? You're not going to have a beer with God either.
I'd like to have a beer with God.
No, you wouldn't.
No,
And
I
most assuredly, God would not want to have one with you.
for sure. But no, the point is, I think we do want a relationship with God that
Right, but not that. That's not the right. God is not our friend. Certainly in the Bible, we
okay.
can make the
Uh,
argument in later parts of
Zera,
Judaism.
no, Zera Avraham Ohavi.
Ohavi, right?
Yeah, and then the reason Hebron is called El Khalil, or it's called Chevron, Chaver, is that God is Abraham's good friend. Yedidia, aside from being my son, is
He
Solomon.
might be Abraham's good friend, but he's not our good friend.
He's not. Well, we
I'm
want
not going with you on that one. I'm not
we
going with you on that
want
one
we
because
want the closeness with God. Depends on what iteration of Jewish history we're in,
I
and
I
what.
think that the predominant emotion, and this is me, obviously you're free to disagree, in the Bible is fear and not love. And God is dangerous, and that danger affects the way that the Israelites relate to God.
I think that these things are dialectically entwined in a very positive way, but I don't think that either of those things, obliterates the other. So, for example, to illustrate, there's a pasuk somewhere, I don't remember where it is. Al ta'amod imanu b'mishpat, do not stand with us in judgment. And there's a Hasidic drash on that that says, on Rosh Hashanah, we need you to be transcendent. We can't have you standing beside us, b'mishpat. You cannot stand with us in judgment. You have to stand above us in judgment of us on Rosh Hashanah. And in other times of the year, we need something different. It
Right.
reminds me of one of my favorite spiritual lines in non-Jewish religious poetry. In Amazing Grace, it is grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. You are this overwhelming thing that imposes awe and yirah, and in that you bring me close, and we overcome yirah, and we have love. I think both of those things are absolutely necessary in a religious personality.
Okay. Well, I would just add is that I think that in later Jewish tradition, there is a shift. Right? Some of the kinuyim, the epithets that we use for God, suggest a very personal relationship, their Eberster and others. And so in that way, I agree with you. But just in the Bible, the earliest strata of our theology, I'm not convinced that
Well,
that is it.
that's a fair point. That's a fair
I
point.
will go in between and say there's love and loyalty and fear, and that vahafta also carries with it. You know, it's not love the Lord your God only. It's be fiercely loyal to God, and
Yeah.
that the demand that Devarim is making here and Moses is making. He's you know I wanted to be able to say in Moses' name, look, I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm not here for you to love me. But you know what? I want these words to be in your heart, and I want you to be fiercely loyal to them to the point of your own life.
Nicely
And
said.
I can take that as the theme here. And you know, Adonai Eloheinu, that's how he starts. You know, we're going to start with our God because those words, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, those are going to be the key words for the book. Anyway, we
With
we
that,
we got a lot going on here. We had tremendous joy. Jeremy Kamenovsky, Rabbi Jeremy Kamenovsky, flying to Israel this week. Have a
yes,
wonderful trip, Nisiat Tova. Give regards to everybody there,
you
and
betcha.
to our friends at Machane Rama, our listeners all around the world. We thank you for spending time with us, and we will see you, God willing, on the next edition of Parsha Talk. Everyone, have a beautiful, beautiful week, a beautiful Shabbat, and Shabbat Shalom from all three of
Shabbat
us.
shalom.
Bye bye.